Hi, I'm Maura. I didn't think announcing my pregnancy at my husband's birthday party would change everything, but it did. You see, my sister-in-law, Darlie, handed me a plate of food that night. Everyone thought she was being sweet, thought she was trying to make things right. But what if I told you that plate wasn't just food, and I wasn't the one who ate it? And what happened next? It wasn't just betrayal. It was something far colder, calculated, covered in years of fake smiles and, "I'm just looking out for you." Everyone says family protects you. But what happens when they're the ones who sharpen the knife? Would you still call that family? Or just a threat with your last name? Because I didn't see it coming until someone else hit the ground. I still remember the way the sun hit the gravel driveway when we pulled up to Velda's house. It was the kind of early spring afternoon that should have felt warm and welcoming, but something in my chest already knew better. Lyle reached across the car to squeeze my hand like he always did, like it was second nature, like he knew this wasn't going to be easy for me. We stepped out together, but from the moment we crossed the threshold, I knew I wasn't part of the picture. There was a large board perched on an easel near the entrance, handwritten calligraphy, gold accents, names listed elegantly under a header. Family and close friends for Lyle's 39th. I read down the list, eyes catching every name. His coworkers, childhood buddies, even his ex's name was printed, bold and centered under special guests. I scanned twice before Lyle whispered, "Do you see your name?" I shook my head, jaw clenched. He leaned toward Velda as she came down the hallway with a tray of deviled eggs and asked, "Hey, Mom, why isn't Maura's name on the list?" She blinked, as if the question surprised her. "Oh, honey, I thought you were bringing her. So we just put Pois in one. You know, to keep the layout balanced." To keep it balanced. That was her answer. Like my presence was a problem of symmetry. Inside, the laughter was easy. Darlie's voice rang out first. She was holding court near the kitchen, doling out air kisses, compliments, and faux modesty as though she were hosting. They fawned over her for putting the decorations together. Handmade banners, flower arrangements, even themed coasters. It looked more like Darlie's event than Lyle's, but no one seemed to question it. Not even him. I took a small plate of fruit and slipped onto a seat at the patio edge, hoping to go unnoticed just long enough to collect myself. When Velda made her way out to greet some neighbors, I tried to join the circle, offering a comment about the lemon bars on the dessert table. Velda smiled vaguely, then shifted the topic. Darlie really went all out. It's incredible, given what she's been through this year. That woman is a rock. Of course she was. Darlie always had a story that conveniently timed itself with anything I was about to say. I sat down again, back straighter this time. Lyle walked over, handed me a soda, then sat close. "You okay?" he asked under his breath. "I'm fine," I replied, then hesitated. "Did you notice my name's not on anything?" He didn't get a chance to respond. Velda stepped in, overhearing without apology. "Let it go, Maura. Darlie's still your elder. She's had to carry a lot more than you, and she's doing the best she can to hold this family together." I didn't say a word. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't trust myself to speak without saying too much. I walked inside a bit later to get water, needing a moment away from the noise. That's when I heard it. Darlie's voice, low but clear. "She means well. She just doesn't know how to be part of this family yet." I stood just behind the archway into the kitchen, unseen. She was talking to Velda's friend from church. The woman gave a polite chuckle and patted Darlie's shoulder, as if to say, "Bless her heart." I backed out slowly and returned to my seat like nothing happened. But everything inside me had shifted. My smile stayed fixed while I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the message threads with Velda. None of them mentioned my name. Not once. Every dinner invite, every birthday text, always addressed to Lyle and guest. I stared at those words until they blurred. That night, as the sun dipped behind the evergreens, Velda stood up and tapped her glass. "Let's hear from some of our loved ones," she called. "But first, Darlie, would you do the honors?" Of course. Darlie glided up to the front of the crowd, wineglass lifted. "Before anyone says anything," she began, grinning, "I just want to say how proud I am to be here for Lyle. He deserves the world." I stood with my glass in hand, the words I had rehearsed all afternoon dissolving on my tongue. Darlie's voice carried through the backyard like it always did. Perfect pitch, calculated pauses, all the warmth of a practiced pageant queen. She talked about family being the backbone of everything, how life teaches you lessons when you least expect it, and then she landed the real punch, her miscarriage. "I was going to share this earlier," she said, her hand resting on her chest, "but I didn't want to make today about me. It's been 2 years since we lost our little one. I still light a candle every week, for healing, for hope." A few people murmured soft oh no's. One woman wiped her cheek. A man behind me whispered to his wife, "Did you know?" "I didn't know." Darlie smiled with perfect humility, like the suffering saint they all needed her to be. Meanwhile, I stood 2 steps from where I had just been ready to speak. My own words, my joy, our news, our moment, had been swallowed by a narrative no one dared to question. Lyle gave me a glance, as if to say, "Do you still want to?" I didn't answer. I nodded instead, mostly to myself, and stepped back into the crowd like I was never meant to stand out in the first place. After Darlie's toast, the music picked back up. Everyone returned to their drinks, to catching up, to laughing. Guests approached her one after another, offering words of support, some even apologizing for not knowing. She hugged them like they were old friends, as if the entire party was her living room, and the rest of us were her guests. I drifted toward the fruit table again. I didn't need more grapes. I needed distance. Lyle joined me a few minutes later, his expression soft but uncertain. He didn't touch his drink. "We can tell people later," he said. "Maybe over coffee, just us and your parents. Doesn't have to be a big announcement." He was trying to protect me. I knew that. But I also knew he had no idea what had just happened. "She knew," I said under my breath. "She timed it." He furrowed his brow, but didn't argue. The rest of the evening passed in fragments. People drifted in and out of conversations. Darlie never once looked my way, not even by accident. Velda made one more announcement about dessert and a photo slideshow put together by my amazing daughter, and I swallowed down whatever was left of my appetite. Back home, I folded the dress over the chair and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't even change. I just sat. Lyle was brushing his teeth in the bathroom, whistling a bit like he always did when he was trying to pretend the day had gone well. Then came the silence. Too long. I looked up and saw him standing in the doorway, phone in hand, a strange look on his face. "What?" I asked. He showed me the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. No name, no icon, just gray bubbles. "Don't be fooled. That baby might not be yours." That's it. No context. No signature. I took the phone slowly, scanning the punctuation, the spacing, the way the period sat alone at the end. I'd seen that rhythm before, on dozens of texts, and only one person in my life punctuated like that. "She sent this," I said, handing it back. "Maura, you don't know that." I didn't respond. "Weirdos are everywhere," he added. "Let's just block the number." "We will," I said, but I already knew I wouldn't forget it. Or delete it. I got up, pulled my laptop from the drawer, and opened the folder I'd labeled 2 months ago, but never touched again. Darlie Pattern Log. Inside, I had saved screenshots, random comments, timestamps of strange coincidences over the years, photos Darlie had liked and unliked on my social pages, texts she'd sent Lyle that ended with, "Don't tell Maura I asked. She'll think it's weird." Small things. Things no one would care about. But now they weren't isolated. Now they were patterns. I added a new note to the top. Party, March 24th. Pregnancy announcement blocked by staged miscarriage story. Unknown text message received that night. Likely her. Lyle climbed into bed beside me, already half asleep. I stared at the ceiling fan as it turned. She's not going to stop, I whispered to no one but myself. I moved the laptop closer and added one more note before closing the lid. Watch her more carefully. I didn't sleep much. My body was in bed, but my head stayed somewhere between Velda's dining table and the glow of my laptop. At some point after midnight, I shut the lid, left it on the nightstand, and slid under the blanket beside Lyle. He was already asleep, quiet, soft breathing, and I envied his ability to float above what had happened. By morning, the energy around the house was muted. Velda had planned a small family dinner to end the weekend, and nobody questioned it. I didn't either. It was her home, her event, her rules. At 6, the dining room was set like a magazine spread. Candles, polished silverware, floral napkin rings. Lyle and I arrived 5 minutes early, but Darlie was already seated across from where Velda had motioned for me to sit. Her smile was tighter than usual. I almost didn't recognize it as real. "Sit there," Velda said, pointing to the spot directly across from Darlie. "I figured you girls could use some time to reconnect." There it was again, her insistence on rewriting us into something we never were. We took our seats, conversations flowed, forks tapped plates, wine was poured. At some point during the second course, Darlie leaned forward and, in that syrupy tone she'd perfected, said, "Pregnancy's a wild ride, huh? Especially for someone like Maura. I mean, she's always been a little delicate." The comment hung in the air longer than it needed to. No one laughed. Not really. A few half-hearted chuckles, one cough. Then Velda, still buttering her roll, looked up and said with a breathy smile, "She's just joking. You know Darlie's sense of humor." Lyle said nothing. He kept eating. I stared at my salad, trying to remember the last time I'd felt like a full adult in that house. After dessert, I excused myself and walked out to the back patio. The air was colder than I expected, but I needed it. I needed something clean, clear. My phone buzzed in my pocket, nothing urgent, just a reminder from my health app to log water intake. I opened it out of habit, checked a few tabs, then clicked into my patient portal. I noticed a login record I didn't recognize. 2 days before the party. The device ID wasn't mine, not Lyle's either. I checked his tablet, phone, even his work laptop later that evening. Nothing matched. And then, a sudden click in my head. Years ago, when Darlie thought she was pregnant, I helped her set up her first access to the same portal. She was nervous, didn't want to mess anything up. I'd logged in on my phone, let her browse, and never thought twice about it. She still had the credentials, or at least remembered how to get in. The access time matched the day before she brought up her miscarriage in that speech. It wasn't coincidence. It was prep work. After the dinner, we drove home mostly in silence. Lyle didn't ask why I hadn't said anything back at the table. Maybe he knew better. Or maybe he still thought this was just a personality clash between two sisters who needed space. When we got home, I poured myself a glass of water, took 2 slow sips, and opened my laptop again. The folder was waiting for me. Darlie pattern log. I added a new line. April 2nd. Unauthorized medical portal login. Likely Darlie. Motive. Sabotage. Manipulation of emotional tone at public event. I flipped through previous entries. The ones I had logged but never fully believed mattered. Gifts that didn't align with my dietary needs. Articles she sent Lyle about advanced maternal age. And the time she showed up uninvited to my first ultrasound appointment, saying she just happened to be nearby. I scrolled back up and added a header. Consistent undermining disguised as concern. I sat back in my chair and rubbed the side of my face. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't overthinking. It was structure. Later, lying in bed, I replayed the dinner in my mind. Darlie's tone, Velda's passive deflection, the way the others looked down at their plates, unwilling to challenge anything that might disturb the peace. They wouldn't see it. Not yet. They won't see it until she turns on them, I said aloud. I picked up my phone and took a screenshot of the login history. Then, I sent it to myself in an email labeled, "Just in case." Because if she crossed another line, I wanted it to be her last. After we got home, I watched Lyle hang up his jacket and disappear into the kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. He asked if I wanted anything, and I told him no. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone still in hand, organizing the folder I had just finished uploading. Every detail, every digital breadcrumb, labeled and time-stamped. I wasn't scared, at least not in the way I used to be. It felt more like being inside a chess match I hadn't agreed to join, but now knew how to play. The next day passed in silence. No family texts, no follow-ups from Velda about the night before. Darlie, of course, posted 3 photos from the party, one of the cake, one with Velda in a side hug, and one of her standing alone near the gift table. No mention of me. Again. That evening, Velda invited us back for what she called a casual bite. I hesitated. Lyle said it might help normalize things. I said yes, but only because I needed to see her up close. We arrived a little past 5. The patio was set again with folding chairs, soft music, finger food laid out like always, shrimp cocktail, fruit skewers, and little spinach puffs I used to love before pregnancy made the smell unbearable. The sun dipped slowly over the fence, casting that long golden hour glow that made everything seem more peaceful than it deserved to be. Darlie approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She held a small plate, balanced carefully, like it was something important. "This one's for you," she said gently. "No garlic. I made sure this time." Her voice had that same rehearsed warmth, the same softness she used when telling Velda about her imaginary promotion last year. She placed the plate in my hands, patted my wrist. I didn't say much, just nodded and walked toward one of the folding tables, setting the plate down beside a half-empty glass of lemonade I hadn't touched. I didn't eat. I didn't plan to. From across the yard, I caught her watching me. Her glance wasn't long, just enough to check if the plate had moved. I looked away before she saw that I saw. "Velda called everyone to gather for a photo. Just a quick shot before it gets too dark," she said. I left the plate exactly where it sat, untouched. After the flash, I wandered back to my table. It was gone. I scanned the tables, the chairs, the counter by the kitchen. Nowhere. So I slipped inside, took the hallway toward the kitchen. There, next to the sink, was a trash bag not fully tied. The plate was in it, wrapped in a new napkin, completely untouched. Someone had taken it and tossed it. I didn't need to ask who. On the drive home, Lyle talked about Velda's garden, how he was impressed she managed to keep the succulents alive after that frost last month. I nodded occasionally, giving him space to talk while my mind rolled back over the timeline. When we got home, I asked Lyle casually, "Hey, can you check the backyard camera for a sec? I thought I saw something weird last night." He was in the middle of taking off his shoes, but shrugged and grabbed the tablet. A few taps later, he frowned. "That's weird. The footage from 5:42 to 5:59 is just blank, like static." I didn't react right away. I already knew what he'd find. That window was exactly when Darlie had handed me the plate. I made a new entry in my log. April 3rd, power flicker aligned with food delivery. Camera gap, 17 minutes. Darlie present. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it like a technician checking a circuit. This was no longer emotional. It was procedural. At bedtime, while Lyle brushed his teeth and flipped through the news on his phone, I sat on my side of the bed and uploaded a new batch of photos and notes to the cloud. I labeled the new folder, "Just in case. Truth always surfaces." I had just closed my laptop when Lyle came in and sat next to me, rubbing his face. "I think your mom meant well tonight," he said. I looked at him, then looked back at my phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I tapped through my photos, checked that everything was backed up, and then turned off the screen. Because tomorrow would come, and I had a feeling someone else was about to pay the price for a plate that never should have been served. The next morning came like any other. Quiet, gray, still. Lyle had already left to pick up bagels for Velda's follow-up brunch, some awkward attempt at a family cool-down. I stayed back to finish my tea and give myself a moment. I kept thinking about the plate Darlie had handed me the night before. The way she looked at it, the way it vanished, and how none of it sat right, not even in my stomach. By noon, we were back at Velda's backyard. It was almost identical to the party setup: folding chairs, plastic tablecloths, trays of food under mesh covers. But there was something off in the air, like the party smiles from last night were now painted on and drying too fast in the sun. I kept my distance from the buffet. I knew Velda would notice, so I made sure to carry a glass of water and a napkin just to keep my hands busy. It didn't take long before Darlie approached, once again holding a plate. Another special one. "Hey," she said casually. "I made sure this one's safe. No garlic, no citrus, all good." She said it with such ease, as if last night had never happened. "I'm not hungry," I replied, flat. "Oh, I get it. Pregnancy waves, right?" She smiled, leaned in. "But don't let this go to waste. Ronan'll eat anything." And just like that, she turned, held the plate out toward her husband across the lawn, and called out, "Try this one, babe." Ronan looked up, wiped his hands on a napkin, and took it from her with a tired grin. "What's in it?" he asked, already lifting the fork. "Just lasagna," she said, voice soft. "The one Maura didn't want." He didn't pause, just started eating like it was nothing. I stood completely still, hand frozen around my glass. The words, "the one Maura didn't want," bounced around my head like a ball in an empty room. 10 minutes passed. Then came the shift. Ronan staggered forward, hand clutched at his side. His face went pale, lips almost bluish. At first, I thought maybe it was the heat, but then I saw him bend forward, violent retching onto the grass. Velda screamed, "Call someone! Call 911!" Lyle ran over, trying to hold Ronan upright. He was shaking now, sweating through his shirt, gasping between gags. Darlie fell beside him, wailing, "What's happening? What's wrong with him?" She looked around wildly, like she didn't know who to blame. I didn't move. I stayed by the edge of the patio, staring. Because I knew exactly what he had eaten. It was the plate meant for me. But I said nothing. Not yet. The ambulance came quicker than expected. Maybe because Velda had called someone higher up at the clinic she volunteers at, or maybe it was just luck. They loaded Ronan into the back, and Darlie cried the whole time, fingers trembling, voice shaking. Velda rode with Lyle in the car behind the ambulance. I stayed. Darlie was still on the porch when everyone else had cleared. Her mascara had streaked, her cheeks blotchy. She held a tissue to her mouth like it was keeping her together. When our eyes finally met, she didn't say anything at first. Then, quietly, "What did you give him?" It hit me like a slap. I walked closer, slow, deliberate. "I didn't touch anything. That plate? You gave it to me. I left it. He picked it up when I didn't." She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at me like I had upended her entire script. "No one's going to believe that," she said finally, barely audible. "Maybe not," I said. "But the camera won't lie." "Oh, wait. Never mind. It glitched again, didn't it?" Her lip twitched, just a little. "Be careful," she murmured, more like a warning to herself than a threat to me. That night, back in my office, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat with my laptop and renamed the folder. Darlie pattern log, active attempt, document everything. I rewrote the timeline, from the message to the missing footage, from the untouched plate to the person who ended up in the ER. I closed the file and leaned back. "I was supposed to be the one in that ambulance," I whispered. Then I added one last note. She didn't panic because someone got hurt. She panicked because it wasn't me. The morning after Ronan was taken to the hospital, The sky hung low and quiet. There was no breeze, no birdsong, just that suffocating stillness that comes after something breaks but hasn't yet fallen apart completely. I had just poured my second cup of coffee when Lyle walked into the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. He held up one finger, signaling I should wait. I leaned against the counter. "She wants us over at 2, he said after hanging up. "Family meeting." "Velda?" I asked. He nodded. "She says it's about what happened yesterday." Of course it was. I didn't ask who else was invited. I already knew Darlie would be there. She wouldn't miss a stage, not one like this. And Velda wouldn't dare hold court without her star pupil sitting front and center. By 1:40, we were pulling up to the house again. The same house where Darlie's voice echoed like wallpaper. The same porch where she cried crocodile tears less than 24 hours ago. Velda greeted us at the door like nothing had happened. Her tone was calm but clipped. I scanned the room. Ronan wasn't there, of course, still in recovery. But Darlie was. She sat on the edge of the couch, wearing light blue with sleeves that fluttered like she'd just stepped off a yoga retreat. Her eyes were red. Mascara had been reapplied. Her hair pulled back with 2 gentle strands loose at the sides. Grief costume, complete. As soon as we sat down, she spoke. No one prompted her. "I almost lost my husband," she said, her voice breaking just enough. "I don't know how this happened, how food at our own party could do that. I can't sleep thinking about it." Not once did she say Ronan's name. Not once did she say she was sorry. I watched the way Velda nodded along. Arms crossed, but not defensive. More protective. No one said my name either, but the tension in the room had it circling like smoke. I let her talk. Let the performance unfold, line by line, like a script she'd memorized and tested in front of a mirror. And then I spoke. The plate Ronan ate from was meant for me. Velda's mouth parted slightly, but she said nothing. "I didn't eat it. He picked it up after I left it behind." Darlie looked right at me. Her face didn't falter, but her hands trembled just slightly, enough to catch the light. "So now I'm being accused?" she said, voice rising. "After everything I've done for this family? For you?" Velda shifted in her seat, preparing to intervene, but Lyle beat her to it. "It's a valid question, Mom," he said firmly. Silence. I felt the axes of the room turn. Not much, but just enough. And then, from the side of the room, a voice I didn't expect. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but I think I have to." It was Inez, the catering assistant, Velda's neighbor's niece. She'd been quiet this whole time, sitting in a side chair, scrolling on her phone. I had barely noticed her. Inez looked up, meeting Velda's eyes first, then Darlie's, then mine. When we were setting up the trays, Mrs. Darlie asked me not to serve one of the dishes. She said it was for her sister. Just for her. That no one else should touch it. Velda stiffened. Darlie's face drained. Just a little. I kept my gaze steady, didn't flinch. No one yelled, no one screamed. There wasn't a dramatic collapse or wailing denial. Just silence. Long and brittle. It was the kind of silence you only hear when something false starts to fall apart. Darlie opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Velda finally stood up, smoothing the sides of her blouse. "I think that's enough for now," she said. "Thank you, Inez." We all began to rise. Darlie didn't look at me. She looked at the floor. When Lyle and I got back in the car, he didn't turn the ignition right away. He stared straight ahead and finally said, "Do you think she did it on purpose?" I looked out the window for a long time before I replied. "I think she wanted to hurt me," I said. "She just didn't care who paid the price." That night, while Lyle slept, I opened the active attempt folder on my laptop and created a new subfolder. Next. Proof. Because now it wasn't just about me, and the next proof would come from a place she didn't know was watching her. The next morning, I was halfway through my first coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from Janelle, our neighbor. She lived 2 doors down, the kind of neighbor who always had eyes on the street, but never overstepped. Her message was short. Hey Maura, weird question. Do you want the security footage from Saturday night? Our camera points over your fence. Motion got triggered a few times. Thought you might want to look. I sat back in my chair, my mug still in my hand. My heart didn't race, but something deeper inside shifted. I replied, kept it light. Sure, appreciate it. A few minutes later, she sent me a short video clip and a message. Might be nothing, but figured I'd offer. I downloaded it, plugged in my headphones, and hit play. At first, it was just grainy backyard footage. The corner of our fence, a slice of Velda's patio visible through a break in the trees. It was twilight. The catering tables had just been set. People mingled in and out of frame until I saw her. Darlie. She crouched behind the table, almost blocked from view. Her purse was tucked between 2 food warmers. I watched her look around, pull something small and shiny from her bag, and reach toward one of the trays. The movement was quick, practiced. Then she stood, brushed her hands on her dress, and walked back into the frame like nothing had happened. I paused it. My hand gripped the side of the laptop. I took a screenshot and saved it. That night, after dinner, I sat Lyle down at the table. I pulled out the laptop and said only one word. Watch. He did. In silence. When the clip ended, he didn't ask questions. He didn't try to rationalize it or tell me it might not mean what I thought. He just said, she knew that wasn't for Ronan. She just didn't stop him. I nodded, already saving the clip into my folder. I renamed it, Exhibit 1, External Source. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't even suspicion. This was visible. The next morning, I texted Velda, asking if I could check in on Ronan. She responded within minutes. He's still weak, but he asked for you. It surprised me. I hadn't expected him to ask for me. That afternoon, I stopped by the hospital. I brought a box of chamomile tea bags, the kind he liked. Velda had just stepped out for a coffee break, so it was just us. He looked older in the bed, not sick, but smaller somehow, like his body had let go of whatever illusion it had been trying to maintain. Hey, he said softly, I didn't think you'd come. I sat down in the chair beside him. You asked for me. He smiled faintly. We were quiet for a few minutes. I unpacked the tea and placed it on the table. Then he said, Can I tell you something? I haven't told anyone. I nodded. Before I passed out, he said slowly, she bent over me. She didn't think I was listening. She said, It wasn't supposed to be you. His voice cracked a little, and she looked terrified, not because I was hurt, because she messed it up. I stayed quiet, let him finish. She sounded like someone who'd just broken her own rules. Did anyone else hear? I asked. He shook his head. Just me. I touched his hand briefly. That's enough. Later that night, back at home, I opened my laptop and began putting it all together. Not as notes this time, but as a structured file, a digital presentation. A single document with everything. Exhibit 1, Janelle's camera footage. Exhibit 2, medical portal login logs. Exhibit 3, Inez's statement. Exhibit 4, Ronan's words, typed as he said them, with time, date, and witness listed as me. I uploaded everything into a shared folder and sent it privately to my friend Jenna, who happened to be a family lawyer in Lane County. No drama, no caption, just the link and one sentence. Please keep this safe. My final act of the evening was drafting a group message to the family. We need a meeting. Everyone. No exceptions. There's something you all need to see. I didn't send it right away. I stared at it for a while. Then, I added a title to the top of the document, The Truth You Ignored. And I clicked send. Because when you finally show the truth, it has to be in front of everyone who looked away. I stood in the hallway, just outside the living room, while the digital projector warmed up. The low whir of the fan inside it matched the sound in my chest. Steady, focused, no panic left. Through the doorway, I could see Lyle setting out glasses of water on the coffee table, Ronan leaning against the armrest of the couch, still pale but alert. The others hadn't arrived yet, but they would. I checked the time, 5:58 p.m. One by one they filed in. Velda first, of course. Her silver hair was pinned up higher than usual, and she carried a Tupperware container of lemon cookies like that would sweeten whatever was coming. Then Darlie entered. Alone. She wore beige, no jewelry, no dramatic makeup this time. Just soft tones and wary eyes, like a woman attending her own sentencing without knowing what the charge was yet. At exactly 6, I stepped into the room. "Thanks for coming," I said. "Please have a seat." No one spoke. I walked to the front of the room and stood beside the screen. It projected the title I had typed the night before in large, bold letters. The Truth You Ignored. "This won't take long," I began, "but it will be clear." I clicked the remote. First slide, Inez's signed statement. Her words, typed and time-stamped, next to a photo of her at the catering station. "She told me not to let anyone touch that tray," the quote read. "Said it was just for her sister." Next slide, medical portal access logs. Highlighted lines showed access from an unregistered device days before the incident. Dates, times, IP addresses. Third slide, the grainy footage from Janelle's camera. Darlie crouched behind the food tables, hand in her purse. Reaching. Lyle stared at the screen. Velda shifted in her chair. Darlie didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed glued to the wall behind me, unfocused. Then came Ronan's quote, typed in the center of a white background. "It wasn't supposed to be you." Silence followed. And finally, I opened the last file. A PDF. Hospital records. Toxicology results from Ronan's blood work. Listed clearly among the agents detected. A compound known to induce uterine contractions. Dangerous for early pregnancies, especially those marked high risk in medical files. Velda placed her hand over her mouth. Lyle looked down at his lap, clenched fists resting on his knees. Ronan didn't blink. He watched Darlie. And she finally spoke. "It wasn't meant to hurt anyone," she said quietly. "It was just to scare her, to get her to think." She stood up, voice rising with every word. "You all treat her like she's this perfect, innocent thing. Like she didn't come in here and take over everything. I was here first. I've carried this family. I planned every birthday, every baby shower, every holiday. And what does she get? A banner? A baby? All the attention." "You tried to poison your sister," Lyle said, his voice like gravel. "This isn't about attention anymore." Darlie's hands trembled. "It was one time, one thing. It went too far. But Ronan, he wasn't supposed to." "You didn't mean for me to eat it," Ronan cut in, voice flat. "But you meant for someone to." That landed hard. Velda finally stood. "Stop talking, Darlie," she said. "Just stop." "No," I said calmly. "Let her say it. Let them all hear." And Darlie broke. Not the theatrical, mascara-smudged crying she had perfected over the years, but the kind of unraveling that doesn't come with noise. Her shoulders slumped. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. She sat back down. I stepped forward, took a breath. "I've already sent everything to the police," I said, scanning each face. "There's nothing more to discuss here. What happens next isn't mine to decide." Then I turned to Velda, the woman who had smiled through every slight, the one who excused every insult from Darlie with a chuckle and the same tired line. "She's your sister." "I'm not asking you to pick sides," I said, "but I am telling you where I stand." And for the first time in years, no one interrupted me when I finished speaking. 2 weeks later, I sat in the back row of courtroom 3B, hands folded in my lap, the smell of stale coffee and paper filling the space around us. Lyle was beside me, silent, his thumb brushing mine like a quiet metronome. Across the aisle, Ronan sat at the plaintiff's table, still pale, still recovering, but upright and present. Beside him was his attorney. On the opposite side, Darlie sat with a public defender she hadn't spoken 2 words to since she walked in. She looked smaller in the courtroom light. Not physically, she still had that straight posture and tight jaw, but smaller in presence. She didn't command the room anymore, not like she used to. The judge, a tall woman with clipped sentences and zero tolerance for dramatics, cleared her throat and began. This is case number 2371C, Ronan Fields versus Darlie Fields. Petitioner seeks immediate dissolution of marriage on grounds of endangerment. There were no objections, no counter-arguments, just a nod from Darlie's lawyer and a hushed, "We accept." No fireworks, no gasps, just quiet, just truth. Finally, in a space where no one could talk over it. Outside the courtroom, Velda stood by the water fountain, wiping her face with the corner of a tissue she'd shredded over the past hour. She didn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. I didn't offer comfort, not out of bitterness, just certainty. The kind of certainty that no longer needs to explain itself. The sentencing came 2 days later. Darlie wouldn't serve prison time. The DA didn't file attempted murder. Too hard to prove intent with enough certainty. But reckless endangerment, tampering with food, emotional cruelty with corroborated witness statements, those stuck. The judge gave her 18 months in a local correctional center, 3 years of probation, and mandatory psychological evaluation sessions. Twice a week, minimum. People in our neighborhood whispered. Some said it was harsh. Others said it wasn't enough. I said nothing. The week after sentencing, Velda dropped off a bundle of baby clothes on our porch. No note. Just a grocery bag tied in a loose knot, with a pair of tiny white booties sitting right on top. I left it there until the morning rain came and soaked through the paper tags. Then I brought it in and put it in a bin we'd already filled from our own shopping. A month later, I was standing in the nursery, holding my daughter against my chest. Her breathing was soft, rhythmic, her skin warm and perfect against mine. Lyle came in quietly, holding a photo frame. "Thought you'd want this on the dresser," he said, setting it down. It was the 3 of us, him, me, and Nate. No grandparents, no aunts, just us. Nate peeked into the room a few minutes later, holding something in his hand, a small paper star cut from a cereal box. "I made this for her," he said, "so she always knows someone's looking out for her." I kissed the top of his head, took the star, and gently tucked it next to the baby's blanket. It didn't erase the past, but it did remind me that the past didn't get to run things anymore. Sometimes healing doesn't come with fanfare. Sometimes it's just a quiet morning, a steady breath, and a choice to stay. Weeks passed. The house stayed quiet. We kept our circle small. I answered questions when friends asked, but never gave more than I needed to. Then, one afternoon, I saw Velda standing across the street. She wasn't walking her dog or bringing in groceries. She was just standing, looking. She noticed me through the window. We didn't wave. We didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. That was enough. Later that evening, Lyle came into the living room with his phone in hand. "Ronan sent a message," he said. "He asked me to tell you thank you for not staying silent." I nodded. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table, tea cooling beside me, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder. Not to edit it, not to add more evidence, just to remind myself I hadn't imagined any of it. It all happened. And I stood up anyway. I'm not angry anymore, but I'll never be naive again. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence that finally stays quiet because it no longer needs to explain itself. Sometimes surviving is the quietest way to win.